Should I start? Kathy and Julia, would you like me to kick off? Yes? Okay, I'm going to kick off. Good afternoon, Kelly. How's it going? And everybody else who's joined us this afternoon for this fantastic session, which is called How to Get Work as a Media Composer. So that's no pressure on all of us panelists. By the end of this hour, if nothing else, I think you should definitely have a lot more of a sense of what the kind of landscape of the composer, the media composer, composer for film or television or gaming or advertising or online, what it kind of is, what it looks like, the pathways that exists, because there are many and distinct pathways that exist for people to look at opportunities, kind of to get work as a media composer. This could be something that you do and you do nothing else, or it could be something that could be kind of a lane as a musician, you know, between a performer and whatnot. There's so many different opportunities. But this session, which is from our friends at the Ivors Academy and our friends at the Musicians Union, is basically, yeah, it's your starter for 10. So if you've done a little bit of work as a composer, or maybe you're just kind of interested in this area of the music industry, then hopefully this panel will be for you. Goodness, there's going to be a lot of learning. So I hope you have, like me, a notepad and pen at the ready to take down all this good information. I want to kind of mention for a second this campaign that the Ivors Academy and the Musicians Union have been involved with, which I think is kind of part of the precipitation of this panel. So it's called Composers Against Buyouts, or CAB. A couple of interesting pieces of information for you. So there was a survey taken of composers within the UK. 35% of composers have taken buyouts. A buyout essentially is where somebody maybe wants to use a piece of music of yours for a project and whatnot, and they pay you a fee at the front end, so at the start of the project, but that fee is buying out the right that you have as a composer or a creator, as we say in the Ivors, to then receive a legacy royalty for that piece of work. That's probably the best way of putting it. So you get a bit of money at the start. Sometimes you don't even get a bit of money at the start, but then you don't have the opportunity to collect, it's your PRS or your MCPS or your legacy royalties. So we all at the Ivors Academy and Musicians Union feel extremely strongly about this. 41% of composers feel like they've given more mechanicals than they otherwise would have wanted to do, and 64% of composers felt that the commissioning environment sometimes felt a little bit coercive. So this campaign, which is kind of looking for fair commissioning and is suggesting a fair commissioning manifesto for composers, can be found on the website of both the Ivors Academy and also the Musicians Union, and I suppose was precipitated certainly as I sit on the Ivors Academy Media Composer Board alongside Banky. It was looking at what is known as the epidemic sounds model. So not looking at them specifically, but the model, as I said, whereby there is an upfront fee, but you don't get, if you're then using the BBC or Channel 4, you don't get that opportunity to have any legacy PRS. You don't get the writer share. You maybe get royalties from things like having the same tracks go on Spotify, but it feels like a worrying time for composers who are staring down opportunities like this when we all kind of thrive off the legacy royalties we make. So that's the campaign. And as I said, if you're interested in finding out more, please do go onto the Musicians Union website or the Ivors Academy website, and you will learn all about it. So that's over with. The plan for today is as follows. We're going to chat for about half an hour. And then after that, we're going to have as much Q&A as it is possible to fit in. And I think we can get through a lot of Q&A, because I'm sure you all have millions of questions, and our friends at the Ivors are going to help kind of with the Q&A window. I'll come into it. We'll get through as many of those as possible. We need to talk about the panelists, because we have sorted it out in terms of whose opinion counts in this conversation about how to get work as a media composer. So we have Banky, we have Kirstine, we have Zoe, and we have Jenna. What I'm going to do, because I would be lousy at giving them as fulsome an introduction as they all deserve, I'm going to ask each of them, starting perhaps with you, Kirstine, to introduce yourself to the thriving room of attendees that we have, and just maybe position yourself within this conversation that we're about to have. So who are you? What's your role? And finally, just for any attendees, it might be, if like me, you're seeing a window with lots and lots of different people in it. If you go up to that view thing in the top is it right-hand corner and click on speaker view, then what that will mean is each time one of us is speaking, like Kirsten's about to speak right now, you will get the full benefit of their screen time, as opposed to seeing a lot of people called Kelly Wood from the MU. So with that in mind, Kirsten, introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, I'm Kirsty McLean. I am a freelance music supervisor now, or starting in a few weeks. But I've been the head of music at Banijay, which is a sort of, it's an independent production company, an umbrella group for several production companies internationally, but our focus is usually on the UK in terms of hiring composers. Before that, I was at Discovery. So I've worked at production companies, overseeing the music for production companies, and I've worked at a network broadcaster. So within the production company environment, our role in the music department is to assist production companies, producers with hiring composers. So we handle contracts, we suggest composers, we work with agents who will put forward composers for us as well. We've worked with Mark quite often. And we also, both at Discovery and at Banijay, we operate an internal production music library, which is helpful for unscripted television, and probably something that's worth talking about maybe a little later in terms of how to get started in writing music for television. So that's probably enough of an introduction, is it, Mark? Or
that is absolutely perfect. Brilliant. We know you are you're a buyer essentially of talent. So that's fantastic. Banky, over to you next. What brings you here this afternoon? I'm sure you have many other busy things that you could be looking at, but you're here.
Thanks a lot. So I'm obviously Banky Ojo. I'm a media composer and sound designer. So I straddle everything from scoring TV shows and commercials to doing sound design and audio post-production, the whole gamut. I actually enjoy exploring the gray space where those two spaces overlap. And I'm coming at this from the perspective of someone who has made this journey from obscurity, outsider looking in, to an active participant, busy and working in the industry. So I've got a few views I'd like to share and hopefully can be beneficial to those who are looking to follow similar.
Brilliant. And we would like to hear those views. Thank you very much. Jenna, what about you? What brings you here?
Hi everyone, I'm Jenna. I'm working at Manners McDade. I'm the head of creative there. So Manners McDade are a music publishing company and also a composer agency. So we're actually the two companies. And I'm across both companies working with composers and artists on their creative strategy, pitching, promotions, and generally, how to kind of increase their sort of, I guess, brand is the best word to use, how to, get as much work in as possible. So that's me.
Okay, absolutely fantastic. So a composer and an agent, and then finally Zoe, a music supervisor. Again, what brings you here?
Well, I was invited to take part.
That is an excellent reason.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. So yeah, music supervisor. I work for a company called Carbon Logic alongside Pete Saville, who's a music supervisor and has been for longer than me. I've been there for about 6 years, mostly working on TV drama, a few films, but generally we do TV drama series. Most recently, what did we do? I Hate Susie was one that was quite popular. Bloods for Sky, that was a paramedic comedy that we did recently. They're the most recent things that have been on TV.
Derry Girls, come on.
Oh, Derry Girls, sorry, yeah, that big fan of that. That just seems quite a long time ago now, but yeah, Derry Girls as well.
I know. In TV landscape, it's like 100 years ago. It's probably about 18 months ago.
Next one is En route.
Yes, I know. They're filming around the corner. I can see them right now. So thank you very much. And I'm the moderator. I'm Mark Gordon. I'm a composer. I mainly work in children's television, kids media. So I've been doing that for about 10 or 12 years. I run a company, Composers, and I'm based in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And we're going to talk about the regional agenda if we have time, which we probably won't. But anyway, thank you all very much. That's brilliant. Thank you, Zoe. So the first question is going to you, Banky, because I think we just need to kick off by that classic chicken and egg moment of composer who kind of comes out, maybe graduates, maybe they were at Berkeley, maybe they weren't, maybe maybe they were in a band, and they're just starting to think about kind of going into media composition. And the big chicken and egg thing, whenever I was starting, was that if you were lucky enough to find someone like Kirsten, you'd be like, hey, okay, you commission composers for shows, and I've heard that you're maybe doing this show or you're doing this short film or something, and I'd like to put myself forward. And the first thing they go is, that's fantastic. Can I see your show reel or your IMDb? IMDb being the list of all this kind of television and film credits you have. And you go, I don't have one. What happens next?
That's pretty much how it started for me.
Okay.
I actually went on IMDb and looked at the composers who were writing music that I really enjoyed. And I actually looked at their history, scrolling past all the feature films and big TV shows.
Yes.
And you would see that there was actually a trend across all the composers that I watched and looked at. It started with shorts for a couple of years. Then you get an odd bit of TV, you see a few more shorts, and then some film, and then fewer shorts. And so that said to me, just looking at the industry and what people have actually done, it's like, okay, so I need to be doing short films. And I think the whole thing about me, the approach that I take, it's very lo-fi and very simple. And I think it's just about doing what's in front of you, because sometimes we think too far into the future, forgetting that there's an important first step that needs to be taken in anything. And sometimes postulating and considering the end of the journey too soon can prevent you from actually just taking the simple and obvious step, which is find short films.
Yes.
I want to end up being at this level, but we start at this level, and accessing people at that level is key to get to building experience. Because you start off at this job. I mean, my background was in sort of commercial music, and I got tired of that and wanted something else. And so you have to start somewhere. And writing for media is a different animal than writing as an artist or producing as a music producer. And so there's a process of learning how to do that. And so getting good at it, and while you're getting good at it, you're building relationships with people who are also learning their craft and developing. And that's the world of short films for me.
Yeah, I mean, this is a perfect thing to kind of jump across to you for a second, Zoe, because Banky mentioned a background in working commercially. And obviously as a music supervisor, you're kind of, you're working with lots of content that is pre-existing, content by bands, content by artists, but you must also have a sense within jobs that you're working on of times where you need to reach out to kind of a composer or someone who can maybe assist with something. It's unusual for a show to just have a music supervisor on it. Dairy Girls is one of the only shows I think that is pretty much just music supervised. So there's no original music on it. So we just started hearing about short films. Where does content like this exist? I mean, do you see it in some of the work that you do, this kind of emerging sphere of directors or producers? And for those people who are maybe seeking to transition from commercial music into being a composer, how do you start to do that?
I'm not too sure about the short film area of things, but definitely there's a lot of kind of commercial musicians wanting to, turn to composition, and that seems to be something that a lot of productions are quite interested in. It seems if they're willing to take a risk, rather than use a composer that's, has always done that and has a very solid list of credits. For the productions that do want to take a risk and go down the kind of artist turn composer route, that is something that happens quite a lot. A few of the shows, there's a show we're working on at the moment, which I won't name, but she's amazing, but primarily she's, a commercial musician turned composer. She's very original, amazing, but the production is, I think, a bit wary of hiring her because she doesn't have the TV drama credits, although she's got other things. What was your question?
Yes. This is it's part of the same chicken and egg thing. So it's interesting. One thing that whenever I started as a composer, like Banky, I was a commercial musician, and I had a couple of syncs, and I used those as kind of leverage towards starting to think about being a composer, even though I hadn't written directly for screen. I suppose what I felt was, it was like music that I've co-written is sort of working to picture. Is that a possible way that people who are coming from that side of the industry can start to think about it? If you've had a sync,
maybe
use it as leverage towards composition work.
Potentially. I mean, if that worked for you, then obviously that is a way you could do it. But I think they are still very different things, actually composing specifically to picture and placing something that already exists onto picture and it happening to, work. I think they're quite different things. I think the best in my opinion, the best way is to really go and assist someone who's already, I know that's easier said than done, but to assist someone who's already, particularly getting into TV drama where there seems to be a reluctance to hire unless you have those TV credits already. Even if you have film credits, it seems like, you know, the execs are still a bit wary of hiring unless you've got a TV series under your belt. And I think even if that's a TV series that you've assisted on, that's very useful. Even if you haven't done it completely on your own, if you've assisted on a TV series already, that's a good way into doing a TV series on your own.
Okay. So Jenna, therefore, Manus McDade, obviously a wealth of fantastic composers. This is an interesting thing that Zoe's just mentioned, which is something that I wanted to talk about, which is the idea of the composer's assistant, because there are so few, the kind of routes towards, you know, just as Banky is saying, you know, and I remember going on IMDb and looking at composers and being like, wow, what are all these weird little short films at the start? How can I get some of those? But the idea of being a composer assistant, that sounds like it could be a good route towards starting to get kind of chops in the area of composing within a certain kind of genre or a certain lane. So tell me this, if I wanted to be a composer assistant, how do I start to kind of start those? Do I have those conversations with you or with Manus McDade? Do I reach out to one of your composers directly? Because that's an interesting thing. What are the qualities and skills I need to be a composer's assistant?
Very good questions. So being a composer assistant, obviously you do need a little bit of experience, even if it is just, you know, commercial studio experience. Reaching out to composer agents is always a good start. We have a sort of database of composer assistant CVs that we can just use whenever we need to, and we can dip into that and recommend people. Sometimes we have meetings with those composers as well, where we'll just chat to them and see what they want, what they're up for, and then we can have them in mind whenever any of our composers are like, oh, I need an assistant who's really good at orchestrating, or I need an assistant who's really great with electronic production, you know, then I've got someone fresh in my mind. But then also, you know, thinking about the sort of music you want to create, people in the industry that you respect and admire, and then going, okay, well, I wonder if they need some help. And it's always worth doing, always worth reaching out directly as well. I think a lot of composers are really open to having conversations with people. And, you know, if they've got the time, they are willing to have a chat with you and find out what you're up to. And, you know, if there could be some sort of collaboration. So I think that's really useful. But, you know, as Banky says as well, I think, you know, just scoring short films, even if you're just at the very beginning and you're beginning to get those composer assistant jobs, also do the short films, start there, just try and meet as many directors as possible. And again, that's just about thinking about films that you like, people that you like, going to film festivals, watching all the short films, going up to directors afterwards, telling them you like that film. And it's hard at the moment with everything being online, but people are doing a lot of all of this on Instagram now, finding people on Instagram, sliding into their into their messages, into their DMs, have a chat with people. People like to talk about their work, so ask them about their work.
Okay. That's some great thoughts there. Thank you very much. Kirstine, let's talk about the actual commissioning process then, just for a second. So show idea lands on your desk. It could be a thing called a production Bible or something, which is a kind of like articulation of what the show is about. It's like 5 to 8 year olds. It's about this girl. Her superpower is, I don't know, she's really good at making spaghetti and she works in a restaurant that, you know, needs a spaghetti maker. So where do you start to go to think about potential composers? So we have a composer agent on board as well, but I'm sure you are yourself the recipient and have been the recipient of so many kind of emails of like, hey, I'm a composer, this is my thing. How do you kind of like funnel down all of those interested parties to be like, okay, here are the 3 composers I'm thinking about shortlisting for this position?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously we tend to start with the ones that we know. And I think, sorry, Zoe touched on it as well. You know, producers are wary of hiring people that they've never worked with before, and certainly people who don't have experience. And so, you know, we tend to follow them, and we will first and foremost always recommend people we've worked with before.
Okay.
And then we go to agents. who will also put forward people, and we have to go on show reels. And sometimes those are sort of bespoke. We don't ask people to do demos, but just put together ideas specific to the program. But we have done things in the past. One of the production companies that we work, that is one of Banijay's companies, does do a series for Channel 4 called On the Edge. And the whole series is about getting underrepresented people into positions in production, primarily screenwriters and directors, but we try to get composers in there as well, especially particularly from underrepresented parts of the composer world, which is pretty much everybody except for white males. But it is, even if you know, it's an opportunity, like short films, to get someone who's a little bit less experienced. And in that case, we will often go to somebody like Jenna at Manners McDade, who have done a lot of the groundwork for us in a way where they've sort of, they're the ones who are going out, finding new talent, getting their talent to work with their more experienced composers. So that's where we kind of, so it's like, that's where we're sort of relying on the agents to a certain extent to do the groundwork for us, to give us the opportunity, to give newer composers the opportunity to get onto something without having had the same level of experience as people were used to.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Thank you. Banky, back to you for a second. One of the things that we need to talk about is this idea of, so I mentioned at the start, I think I'm mainly a specialist in that I work in kind of children's media, but this is another big thing, which is about, do I specialize or do I do anything? If I'm pitching to Kirstine for, you know, a kids show and I haven't done any kids, that's maybe going to be a problem. But then if I kind of set out at the start of my career to go, okay, all I'm going to do is like Philip Glass, kind of like haunting solo piano, whatever, when that, you know, I don't know, you know, whatever, McDonald's, Little, Adidas advert comes along and they need like something that's like trap, and I could do trap really well. I'm like, oh no, I don't really kind of do that sort of stuff. I just do. So how do you reconcile yourself? Because you must have this as a composer. It's like, do I do one thing and be completely awesome at it? Or do I show that I have the kind of flexibility to do lots and lots of different things? Discuss.
That's a great question. And actually, I think my answer to that has changed over the years.
Okay.
So at the very beginning of the journey, I set aside my commercial music experience, such as it was, and literally started my career again, reset expectations, forget what you think you know, and start again.
Okay.
And in that process, it's about, what's the first thing to do? Find work, write music, find any opportunity that you can, because I've never written to picture before at this point. Find any project. And at that point, I didn't care what genre it was, what type of film it was, what the project was for. It was just get me some experience with pictures in my door and writing music to it.
Okay.
And I think over time, you get to discover where your strengths and your weaknesses and your interests lie. Okay. And I think over time, I've discerned the things that I'm really good at. And I think the quest of any creative, I think, is finding the center of that Venn diagram of, you know, between what you do well, what works out there in the world, what you're comfortable doing, and what will pay you. And it's finding that space that you can operate in that provides you that comfort to keep working. And I think something that was clear to me quite early on is that as a creative, it's important to appreciate that I've got a perspective, and I am also an artist, and I do have my own artistic views.
Yes.
But moving into this space as a media composer, it's understanding the operational realities that you're servicing other people's creative needs. And there's a big distinction in the headspace of the artist versus the composer, where you're trying to bring a director's idea, somebody else's idea, to vision, and working with decision by committee, as opposed to, this is my art, this is my voice, take it or leave it. So I think making that distinction helps you to be able to say, I can write music, I will say to myself, I can write something for me anytime I like. My door is here, day and night, I can write on it anytime I like. But the quest for me was about finding what I do well, but you only do that by doing lots of different things. So I think particularly early on, experiment as widely as possible. And I think you'll find a space that resonates with what you're capable of and what you're good at and where your interests are.
Yeah. I think that's I think it's a brilliant answer. And I think especially that idea about kind of setting aside your own ego. We've been in situations whereby we're on the 14th version of a theme song for Nickelodeon. We've just done what we think is like the greatest thing ever. And we're like, this is it, Jedi mind trick. This is the song for you. And they're like, yeah, do you want to just give it one more go? And we're like, oh boy, do we? I'd love to do it again. That would be amazing. That is definitely, that's why I guess composing, being a media composer, Zoe, it's not for everyone. And you definitely need to have that kind of like specific thing of being able to like, kind of push down your own kind of personal, sometimes subjective creativity and being like, I'm serving the story. I'm serving a higher purpose than my own creativity, I suppose. Zoe, it'd be interesting to know from your perspective, because we've heard a little bit about film festivals and we've heard a little bit, and obviously, we're here, Ivors and Musicians Union, both who do kind of networking events and whatnot. Setting aside kind of, this and that from the last 14 months, give me a sense in the kind of calendar. Oh, there's my phone. This is live, people. Of the events that you would go to and that this community would go to that are good events for somebody thinking about starting to network in this area, whilst I go on mute.
Well, this is not something that Pete and I have done a lot of, although we have been speaking about it recently, but we were literally just talking about, we need to get in the diary what all the kind of indie film festivals are and make sure we go and network. So there's that, although I don't know a lot about which ones in particular you should go to. I guess it's a bit different for me as a supervisor. Like the events I always used to go to were things like the Great Escape, in Brighton. But that was more about me just keeping my ears open for new music. So yes, it's a bit different from what you might need to do if you're a composer. I guess there's different events that you would go to as a composer.
Yeah, I'm thinking like London. We mentioned the London Film Festival, Edinburgh TV Festival, Sheffield Dog Fest, sort of places like that. I guess places within the community where you can find people who are themselves wanting to, music buyers, I guess. And another thing I'm kind of interested in as well, just kind of following on from that, it's who I follow on social media. Number one, I don't follow that many composers because I always feel a bit like, oh, they're talking about this awesome job they've just got. I don't even want to read about that. Who do you think aspiring composers should follow on Instagram or on socials? Is it like producers? Is it directors? Is it music editors? Is it production companies? Is it, because there's so much opportunity out there and so many people are articulating like, oh, Channel 4 is launching a new short film strand. How do you start to kind of navigate that part of the world? Because there's so much information and some of it is kind of like slightly actionable, like, a guy from a gaming company who last night was going, I want to hear new demos.
Well, definitely. I think that as a composer, you probably do want to, if in terms of who you want to follow, producers, line producers, directors, but also I do think the music editor is another way in. Like we work with a music editor called Ed Hamilton.
And what does a music editor do for the benefit of those who don't know?
Well, when it works really well is they're literally working very closely alongside the composer and working with the stems of what the composer is creating, and literally
what are stems?
Stems is like the file, the song, the WAV or whatever file broken down into its layers, like the bass, the vocals, all the parts that make up what you hear as the compressed final.
Okay, cool. So music editors,
individual files from Pro Tools or whatever it is they're using, and so a music editor will basically then house all those bits, all the stuff that the composer is sending over, can kind of separate it out, pick which bits to use, where it goes, and really work with the composer to really integrate the score in a much better way than I think is possible without a music editor. I think it's a very, very useful thing.
So maybe music editors are everybody is pitching towards kind of music supervisors and maybe music editors are the people that we need to go into Instagram and Twitter and find out more about that part of the industry. They sound like potential interesting gatekeepers.
Well, a music editor could be a way in for a composer, and vice versa. A composer might be already on a project and they might need a music editor. So it can work both ways, but I'd say the music editor relationship is probably a good idea. So yeah, follow music editors on Instagram or wherever.
Cool. Thank you very much. So, I mean, I mentioned Jenna there about sort of, who the gatekeepers are, and, none more so than a composer agent. It sounds like if I get a composer agent, I'm going to be on easy street. I'm not even going to be in social media because Manners McDade are going to get me all my work and it's going to be sweet for the rest of time. So my first question to you is, that's obviously not true. What are the kind of, as you're looking to kind of, and obviously you get submissions all the time, and I'd like to know what's a great submission and what's a rubbish submission, but I'm interested in, like, what are the kind of metrics that you look at when you're thinking about, maybe we could take that person on as a composer? Is it just like, have they had hits in TV? Are they maybe doing something you don't know if anybody else is doing that, kind of like all they do is recording a zither and that's it? And actually, that's a big thing. What do you look for?
Is this, sorry, who's this to? Oh, sorry.
No worries, sorry. Yeah, so it's a really interesting one in that we have to think about the overall roster as an ecosystem almost. So we really like working with up and coming composers. We definitely have a really broad range of composers, but we do have a lot of younger composers. And, we're always looking for underrepresented talent, and we're looking for individual sounds. I think the most important thing with a submission is we want to hear something that is refreshing, and that's a really hard thing to do, and we appreciate that. But, we want to hear something that is going to stand out and help us do our jobs. Because as you say, it sounds like we're gatekeepers, but actually we aren't. All we can do is put our composers in front of the right people and say, we think this person is brilliant. Once we've done that, it's totally up to them on whether they take our advice or not. And it's totally up to that creative on whether it works with their show, with their film or whatever. So, we make as much opportunity happen as possible, but we can't force anyone. You can take the horse to water. Yes. So, really for me, it's what makes someone easier to pitch and to promote is a sort of unique identity. And I know that's really hard when you're talking again about writing music for the higher being, for the creative brief. Yes. You then, how do you do writing for music for a creative brief and for the bigger purpose of the film whilst having an identity? It's really, really tricky. But I guess there's a few ways of looking at that. One might be thinking about how you are out in the wider world. So maybe you're releasing EPs or albums that really speak to how you want to create music, and that can then inform people of your sort of style and help you work on projects in that style. Or it's a case of getting the credits that you're most proud of. Then what happens once you get that credit? How can you get that out to as many people as possible? Say you've just done a short film, not many people have seen it, but you thought it was a really great score that you loved making and you loved the whole team and it was just one of those dream projects. Okay, well now it's time to get your address book out and send it to everyone. So we kind of want to have people who have those existing relationships and those kind of exciting credits and that sort of profile in the industry. And I guess another thing as well would be, meeting at film festivals and things like that. If we see, quite often what's happened to me is I bump into a composer at 3 different film festivals and I see them pop up on my social media, and then I hear their music on Spotify and I think, God, I've seen a lot of this composer. I'm going to check them out and see what I think of them and invite them in for a meeting. So yeah, there's all sorts of things you can do to kind of build that wider profile. But I guess also the most important thing is we really like working with nice people. That's like our number one. If you're a nice person and you make nice music, then your street's ahead of a lot of people. So send us an email with a nice nice introduction to yourself with some beautiful music, and we'll give it a listen. We listen to every single submission we get, which is no mean feat, but we do it.
Amen to that. Okay, brilliant. Thank you for those insights. Kirstine, we're going to have to rattle on towards Q&A in a minute, but I wanted to talk to you for a second because you mentioned in your introduction about production music and how production music is maybe, because we've listened to all these different ways in which you can kind of progress, maybe through being an artist and, you know, using that, maybe being a composer's assistant, obviously working on short films. That's great. But where are those short films and kind of how to find them on social media and whatnot, you know, maybe getting to sync and kind of, and using that to jump off from, and then kind of whether you specialize or whether you do something general. But production music or library music is definitely another big way in which composers can start to get credits, can start to build up show reels. Obviously, historically, this was, you know, this was not seen, this is seen as a kind of different thing. It's like, oh, you're either a composer or you kind of made library music. But these days, library music is phenomenal, the kind of output that's happening. Yeah, just talk for a second about production music and how you can kind of see it working for emerging composers and and the landscape as exists now.
Yeah, library, as you say, it's come a long way. It used to be the sort of the last chance saloon of music, for particularly for television, when you didn't have a budget. But it's just because along with the rest of the music industry, it's changed significantly. Composers and commercial artists will write for library. The kind of budgets that go into library are much bigger than they used to be. Well, probably not as big as they were in the 60s, but you know, decent budgets for library. And so there's twofold. One, as I said, we have our own library internally at Banijay, and we did at Discovery. And that's one of our sort of best opportunities, I think, to try out new composers. So we will commission music for our library. So we'll say, oh, we just need an album of light tension, or we need an album of sort of indie pop songs, or we need, you know, whatever it is we think we need. We work with the music supervisors, we'll work on briefs, we'll write a brief, and then we'll hire composers to do it. So it's just good opportunity for people who don't have the experience to understand what it is television needs, because it's a very specific need, particularly in unscripted television, which is entirely different from drama and comedy.
Yes,
there's a structure, and so we can help them a lot along the way with that if they haven't got that kind of experience. So that's when we take our opportunity to work with composers we haven't worked with before. And we also work with there are, I wouldn't call them agents, but there are sort of, you know, there are composer groups that we work with that focus on library, that also sort of do what I was saying before in terms of what say Managers McDade do, or some of the agencies do, is they kind of look for new talent, and again, a lot of people who worked in commercial who want to make that move. And you know, I'm a music supervisor, so I can't give a lot of feedback on actual production, but they will do that. So I can explain the sound that we want to explain, the structure, but production sound, all that kind of stuff, those, you know, there's, you know, companies like We Are Golden or whatever can sort of help focus a composer on the sort of specific needs of media in terms of, you know, in terms of the actual production sound and deliverables. So yeah, I think so. Library is great. And then obviously in the wider industry, there are all the sort of, there's the MCPS libraries and there's audio networks, and there's more and more libraries popping up all the time. So I'd say it's sort of worth trying to get in with those libraries. It's a lot more open space in terms of, it's easier to take chances on library because it's not for one particular thing. You don't have the constraints of a schedule or a budget that you do on a television series or on a film. So it's just a little bit, you can take a chance on library a lot more.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that's brilliant. Absolutely. And then, as I said, you can use it. It's like, look, you know, I was used in Top Gear, I was used in Bake Off, I was used in, you know, whatever. And so it starts to build up kind of credits. Fantastic. Right. Thank you very much. We are going to move on to questions. But before we do that, from each of the panelists, I want two things. Number one, give me the name of somebody amazing to follow on social media who kind of like will kind of stimulate my interest in this part of the industry more, or maybe somebody involved in commission, or maybe just somebody who's awesome about kind of like talking about being a media composer. And then secondly, give me something about an email that you've received from somebody pitching as a composer, that was really good that you're like, yes, okay, if you write emails that say this in it, I'm more inclined to kind of get back to you. So number one, give me somebody awesome to follow on socials that's going to blow my mind about kind of being a media composer or kind of opportunities in this area. And then number two, give me a great tip about when I'm ready to do one of those emails to one of you, you know, you'll be more inclined to like get back to me. So Banky, you know, I'm coming to you first.
Okay, cool. So I think the first question, who to follow? I think Christian Henson from
Ah, there it is.
His YouTube. It had to be. Come on.
Yeah.
If you're writing music for media, his YouTube channel is absolutely phenomenal.
Okay. Christian runs Spitfire, which is a production music sample based company. And yeah, he's got videos.
His videos are excellent, and they talk through creativity as well as career development as well.
Okay, Christian Henson.
That's right.
And then give me the top tip. Give me an email that, you know, you received from a potential assistant or somebody where you just thought, yes, if more people would do that, my life would be better.
Do you know what? I'm going to flip it around, and I'm actually going to share my approach to actually writing and sending communications to people and actually getting positive responses. Accept, first of all, that you're not great for everybody. It's okay to not fit every single hole. It's important to figure out who's going to be the right fit for the kind of stuff that you do.
Okay.
And then do your research. Find out what it is that they're doing and communicate what it is that you like about what they're doing, and make sure that you highlight the aspect that makes you compatible with what it is that they're doing.
Okay. So don't BCC 200 people.
Don't BCC 200 people.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Zoe, give me somebody awesome to follow. Give me an awesome tip for that first email. And you're on mute.
All right. I can't think of the Instagram thing.
Okay.
Let me answer the other one first.
Do the other one.
In terms of people that email, because we get a lot of emails. I think the ones that do stand out are literally the ones where it looks like they've at least done a bit of research on what we've previously worked on, or you know what we might be working on at the moment. A lot of the time it's just very general, and there's no mention of us specifically, so it's just very obviously gone out to millions of people, or it's just very out of date. They're sending ideas for something that we've already finished working on, which I know is hard to find out that kind of stuff. You're never quite sure when it's in post-production or when it's all wrapped up or whatever.
But you list your stuff. I can go on your website. I can be like, okay, you did this and this and this.
Yeah, it's not that hard to just make bespoke to the person you're emailing.
Cool. All right, this is good. Excellent. Thank you. And if you have an idea about the person to follow, you can pop it in the chat window, or I'll flag it up later on. Jenna, what about you? Quickly, because we need to get through these questions. Give me the person to follow, and then give me the top tip.
So a person to follow is actually an organisation called the Alliance for Women Film Composers. Do not let the name fool you. You can sign up as a male composer as well. You can sign up as a supporting member. And they have all these brilliant tech session videos. It's amazing.
Okay.
And then a top tip, I would say be confident in what it is that you are offering. And I think what Banky was saying is really, really important, of being discerning.
Yep.
So understanding that you're not going to be everyone's taste, but also choosing things that you like, going for directors that you really respect. And then you're just always going to have a better creative conversation, but also going into that conversation, knowing what your unique USP is and what you have to offer.
Okay, absolutely fantastic. Finally, Kirstine, for you, give me someone awesome to follow who isn't in the band Guided by Voices, and give me a top tip of something to say in an email.
I'm sorry, I'm terrible with social media, so I would.
Okay.
I mean,
well, let's just say follow Guided by Voices then.
Yeah, follow Guided by Voices, or Nick Harvey, because he's a big composer and he's hilarious on Twitter.
Awesome.
But I don't know.
He is hilarious.
I don't know if it gives you much about composing, but anyway. And then I think in terms of emailing, we get a lot, as you can imagine, and we do get those ones that are like, "Hi, I love your work at Banijay," and then they start talking about how they do trailer music. So it's the ones that really we don't do trailer music. The ones that really stand out are that they've clearly done the research, and they are like I saw that you were a music supervisor in this. I love that, and I do this. And Jenna said it as well, that it's like if you have something unique to put forward, do that. And those are the ones that have stood out before, and the ones that we cut that we'll kind of go back to. I'd say something unique, and at least mention something that the company or the music supervisor or the agent or the company
this is
do.
This is information that's in the public domain. To not do that is just awful. Okay, everybody take a deep breath, because we're going on to Q&A, and we're going to get through, I'm going to say 15 of these at least. So we're going to do Twitter style responses. So question from Rob. Hi team, question about pitching with audio as opposed to video. A lot of the best work I want to show off is audio only. Okay, yeah, audio versus video in terms of pitching. Who wants to take that one? Yeah, okay, Jenna, SoundCloud or Vimeo? What's better?
I think that those show reels where it's just a video and then it chopped into another one and it chopped into another one are awful. They're outdated. They don't work. I think the best thing is a playlist. I really do. And it doesn't matter. SoundCloud, Disco, whatever platform you use, we can all go and watch that project if it's out there. We can follow Vimeo links if it's out on Vimeo. But I want to hear the music. That to me is the most important thing, and it seems to work best with all our production contacts as well.
Nice, that is awesome to hear. And also that gets around that whole thing about like, oh, here's my BBC thing, here's my ITV thing. Excellent. Somebody else want to jump in very quickly on that? And I mean quickly.
I was just going to say, I was going to say audio only. I don't want to. You want to be able to imagine it on what you're working on or might be working on in the future, and not be distracted by.
Okay, brilliant. Question, Kirstine, to pitch to a music supervisor, should I look to get a sync agent, and where can I start to look to find a sync agent who is awesome? I mean, in the UK, we don't have that many sync agents.
No. So I think when you say sync agent, you mean specifically you have what you would consider commercial music that you want to get pitched.
I'm assuming that's what it is. Yeah.
So I don't think you need a sync agent, but we do get a lot of our submissions are from labels and publishers. So not sync agents so much, but labels and publishers. Okay.
Banky, you mentioned short films, but where can we find out about short films that are being commissioned? Now, I know that, for example, for me in Northern Ireland, we have a government screen development agency called Northern Ireland Screen. They fund short films. There are two types of films they fund. One is about $3,500 all in. One is about $7,000 all in. And composers can just go on their website and be like, here's all the films we've just commissioned. Where are good places, good resources to find out more about short films so that you can start to pitch for them?
There are tons of film festivals every year. There's a season where there are film festivals just about everywhere across the country. But what I would say is that universities, there are tons of universities and film schools that are turning out bundles of graduates who all want to be directors. Every single one of them, as part of their curriculum, has to produce a short film as their final major project. They'll do that in the second year. They'll also do it in the third year. Sometimes they'll do it in the first year as well. So each of those is an opportunity for a composer to start cutting your teeth on the process. There are so many universities. There are so many students. They're all out there. Just go out there and find them.
Yeah, and those, I totally agree. And those directors and producers that you start working with at that point, if they get on with you, you will go on that journey together as they go into kind of like short commissions for it. Absolutely. Brilliant. Okay, a question about someone who composes and records their own jingles and wants to license their music. Are sync licensing sites like Centric and Songtrader and CD Baby useful places to try and, we're maybe even talking about library music here. Someone who writes their own jingles, so they're not being commissioned by a library, they're just kind of creating them. What's the best way to put stuff like that into the marketplace? Is it better maybe to look at a library thing, or I don't know, who wants to take that one? Hands up.
I can take that.
Cool.
Yes, I would say get it through a library. Because with library too, we're usually short on time, and we have our favorite libraries that we go to all the time. So yes, library. Yeah.
Okay, library could be a good way to go. Here's an interesting question. This is a great question. Coming into the media composition industry with an artist voice, like the kind of Trent Reznor vibe, does it allow companies to know what you're capable of or what your sound is? I think, Zoe, you were talking about that artist. Can I guess who it is, the female artist?
You
No,
can
I'm not gonna
guess,
guess.
yeah.
Is it PJ Harvey?
No.
Oh. All right.
Yeah, she's someone that obviously is known for her commercial.
Yes, and has moved into composing. If you come into kind of media composition with a kind of identifiable artist voice, is that useful to let people know what your sound is? Is that a good thing if you're trying to transition into media composition?
I mean, this is not the one I was thinking of, but another really good example and favorite of mine is Mika Levi, who
yes,
although I think they actually did study composing at Guildhall, so it's slightly different, but they were originally known for their band, Mikachu and the Shapes. So that's another example of that kind of crossover. It really depends on the project. I think certain, obviously, can't remember his name, Jonathan Glazer, he obviously has gone to Mika Levi multiple times because he likes that sound for his project. So I guess it depends on the vibe of the project, whether it will suit, whether a composer will suit that project. But it's definitely worth being known for a specific sound if you have it.
I mean, I suppose I always kind of think that, you know, like for all creatives, whether they're TV producers or film or in gaming, you know, they don't just live in a silo of what it is that they make. They're surrounded by awesome art that interests them, whether they're reading a book or seeing a photo or listening to a song on six music or whatever. So if you're kind of resonating across other areas of the industry, then it can only be of benefit if you start to think about doing more kind of media, because you have a kind of presence and because you have a kind of authentic voice that exists already. Here's a question, maybe Jenna, do you want to take this one? Two people who've been scoring high-end factual TV for about 15 years and do a bit of sound design and post as well. They want to get into scoring for drama. So this is that thing about, like, you know, you become really good at doing one thing, but you're like, yeah, but what I really want to do is I really want to do drama. So how do you kind of like, how do you change lanes when you become known for doing one thing really well? Or do you? Can you?
That is a really tricky thing. I would say it's almost think about it like starting again. And I know it sounds really demoralizing, but bear with me.
Yep.
Writing for factual, you might have some really brilliant credits, but they're not going to be applicable to drama. So maybe trying to get some of those more, you know, whilst you're doing the factual, getting some really, really strong creative short films, or some of the, like, you know, anything. Basically all it takes is one really brilliant short film, or one like slightly you know, maybe a BBC Three comedy drama or something, and you might be able to move your way in. But it is about sort of building up from not the bottom up, because you've got experience, like demonstrable experience, but you do have to sort of build that up again. But maybe also, if you're thinking about the sort of music you have already for high-end factual, does it apply to drama? Maybe even think about creating some music that you can put in show reels that is more drama tailored.
Okay, good answer. Thank you. Next question, we're going to have to start speeding up. Although I think we have done, we've answered like 17. We're already ahead of ourselves. Hi, loving the seminar. Thank you. That's always a good way to start your question. There's a lot of talk about composers, which I'm taking to mean piano keys, VSTs, but what about songwriters who have songs they want to have used in adverts, for example, Amy Wedge and Keeping Faith? Is that a more difficult process? Well, obviously, this is a kind of distinct process because it's music that pre-exists. It's commercial music, so it's not composed music. It's not commissioned music. Would you like to add anything, Kirstina or Zoe, about that end of things?
I guess the best avenue to get already existing music into film and TV is sync agent, or getting a publisher or label who will pitch it for you.
Yeah, I suppose, Kirstina, it's that idea that, you know, I mean, historically, you would see music supervisor panels and they'd be like, oh yeah, I love new music. And you know what I really like are unsigned artists who have 3 songs, because I take those songs and I make them into awesome adverts. But actually, sometimes the reality is, it's like, oh, I'm just going to go to Cobol and like ask them to send some tracks across or whatever. So yeah, a sync agent is a good kind of aggregator to take emerging talent that maybe doesn't have that much repertoire and kind of like have it move slightly closer towards the opportunity, and also have people know that it's like there's no samples, it's 100% clear, the master recording and the publishing. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think Eccentric is a publisher. I think they have a slightly different setup than a traditional publisher. So they do take on a lot of newer artists, and they're very active in sync. And yes, as you said, fully cleared. But also for television, it is helpful to, if you don't have a record label or a publisher, try and register with the PPL for your masters and with the MCPS for your publishing side, because with the BBC and ITV and Channel 4, Sky, there's a blanket, and we don't have to clear things directly, but they do have to be registered with the PPL, and they do have to be registered with the MCPS.
Yes, that is absolute Music Sync 101. Be registered with the PRS, MCPS, and PPL if you're a commercial songwriter wanting to get in sync. Thank you very much. Banky, somebody who wants to get into video games, scoring video games, and is asking whether they should focus on video games from the very start of their career, or look at kind of short films and TV to build a portfolio. I would have thought with the indie game developer landscape, you should just like go on Kickstarter, find some games or looking to get funded. I don't know. What do you think?
That sounds to me like that's the way I would process it. And again, that's one avenue. But again, universities, there are people out there learning how to develop games. There will be people every year that are building new games who have not worked with a composer before. That's a great fertile soil to start building those relationships again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, Jenna, one for you. Is a composer agent necessary to get regular success with composition work? I want to know what regular success looks like. What do you think? I mean, I don't have a composer agent, so not that I'm using myself as any kind of yardstick, but yeah, what do you think? It's not all roads lead to composer agents, is it?
No, you can have a very successful career without a composer agent. However, I think choosing a moment to find a composer agent is going to be based on what's going on in your career in that moment. So do you need some support and help on the administrative side of things, contracting, negotiating, school coordinating, things like that? And also, do you need someone to help you focus your creative strategy and your career strategy? If you say yes to both, and you're at a place where you have a fairly regular amount of work coming in, and you have some contacts, and you have a little bit of your own sort of style and sound that you've established, then that's probably a really good moment to speak to an agent.
Okay, brilliant. And I think this was a follow-up question. Who is the person just speaking about underrepresented groups? Was that was the composer group that you were that was your recommend, Jenna, I think?
Yeah, and there's also Free the Work, which is a directory for underrepresented talent. And on that directory, you have directors, editors, DOPs, and composers. So if you're an underrepresented composer, you can sign up to Free the Work as well. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. It's 3 o'clock. I'm going to keep going like Dinosaur Jr. in the Word until somebody cuts the power. We'll do another couple of minutes. Okay, question about composer's assistant. I've just started working with the composer, and the work he gives me is very ad hoc, and I can't see how it would go forward. I mean, I think it sounds great that you've got a job as a composer's assistant already. Where do you go from in terms of if you become a composer's assistant? How do you kind of jump off that to start to kind of do your own stuff? Anybody want to take that?
I'll take that.
Yeah, go, Banky.
I think Jenna might have touched on it earlier. That's one avenue of attack, and you've planted a seed, and hopefully that will bear fruit. You'll be getting great experience working with somebody who's established. You're picking up more than you are possibly conscious of, and you'll draw on the skills and experience that you're gaining from that composer. But you also have to build your own as well. So go out there and find those short films. Go out there and discover your voice and practice your craft.
Yes. There
may come a point where those points converge.
Brilliant. Next question. Oh, where's it gone? One for the music supervisors. What's the balance? This is a great question. In seeking music for media versus library music versus bespoke. What's the split between, I don't know. It's like job by job, right? I suppose.
Yeah. I don't know. I was going to just say a third each, but it really just depends. I mean, everything I've worked on, maybe with a couple of exceptions, there's a composer on board. There's a budget that will allow us to license, a certain amount of commercial pre-existing music. And then we will, usually because of budget, we'll have to use some library as well. So it's generally a mix of those three.
Yeah, and I suppose driven kind of by the vision of the, you know, it's if it's a director who wants lots of kind of like funny 1980s needle drops, then obviously there's going to be a lot more supervised stuff. Whereas it's somebody who wants to kind of like have the music work really tightly with narrative, then it might be more composed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We are going to have to finish in a second. Oh gosh, here's a question. Are there any online resources which advertise for media composers? I wish this would be helpful to know what media work is needed and available. I think there used to be lists that you could subscribe to and pay money that were like, you know, but yeah, I mean, where do you all go to? You know, should you subscribe to Broadcast Magazine and see, oh, this is in development, maybe I should kind of like track down the producer or the indie production company? Any thoughts on how all of you, you know, kind of find new opportunities?
Broadcast is a good one. We definitely use that in terms of finding new jobs that we might be able to music supervise.
Yep.
IMDb Pro is good because you can see things well ahead of them being on the public version of IMDb.
Yes.
Those two I'd say is good.
Okay. Any more for? Go ahead.
I'd say television magazine, or the online equivalents. If you're looking to get into these worlds, having an understanding of the mechanism and who's involved in making these productions, these publications will list and have interviews with people who are involved in these publications. And if you're involved and interested in these industries and you learn about them, and you're contacting people, say, I really love this project, and you can talk intelligently about what it is that they've done and why you like it, that's going to increase the likelihood of when you do contact them, you'll have a positive outcome.
Yes. Okay. We're going to do two more and then we are going to have to stop because we all have work. Well, we could talk about this all day. We shall one day do the extended 12-inch remix of this panel. And literally 5 hours later, we'll still have answered about 5% of the questions. A guy called Graham here has been suggested to me in the past that I should send a speculative playlist to music supervisors, but would that be strange if I'm trying to get into the industry as a media composer? That's a hard one, isn't it?
I'll take this one.
Cool. Thank you, Jenna.
Traditionally, music supervisors weren't so much of a big thing in the UK because of broadcasters having blanket licenses and things like that. And I don't know why, but I do know why, all sorts of reasons, probably not worth going into now. But the role of the music supervisor is getting more and more important in this country, much like it is in the US now. And those music supervisors are being asked all questions about music, whether it's composing or catalogue. Sure, Zoe can fill you in more about that. But I'm noticing as an agent, I'm speaking more and more to music supervisors. So I don't see why not.
Okay. Any more thoughts on that? No. Okay. And then just one final one, which we talked about a little bit before, but it's that same thing about marketing yourself as a media composer, someone who writes in a wide range of styles. Is there a danger? People think of me as a jack of all trades, master of none. I do find people like to pigeonhole you into certain genres. There seems to be an assumption you can't be good at every genre. Is that true, Banky?
If you want a burger, you're going to go to a place that sells burgers. If you want a pizza, you're going to go to a place that sells pizza.
I want a pizza.
I think it makes it easier for people to, if they know what they want and they know what you are, it's easier for them to tell if you're going to be compatible. If you do everything, it's likely that your strength isn't going to be in all of them. There will be other people who are specialists who have risen to the top in each of those different fields. So it makes it more difficult for you to cut through the noise.
Yeah, that's very true. Anybody else have any final comments on that one? I mean, it's a hard one, right? You know, and then you're like, oh, but can you do this 50s jazz score? And you sort of have to either go, yeah, let me just Google what that means and I'll work it out on the job, or go, actually, do you know what? This is not my thing. I'm more like modern classical piano, like every other composer in the world at the moment.
I think I'll just jump in just to say with certain, again, talking about sort of reality TV, non-scripted TV, sometimes you need to be a little bit more kind of flexible and agile. And that doesn't mean, I mean, I agree entirely with Banky, and I think that we always look for specialists when we know what we want, but some unscripted television can be a little bit like, we need something like this and something like that. So we sometimes will need someone who can sort of turn their hand to everything. It's not, you know, it's sort of, the music is a little bit more in the background and not featured. So there's an element where you might just, you know that, Mark, we've asked you to do weird stuff on some of our shows, but
absolutely,
you know.
Yes. No, that is true. For stuff like that, it's quite handy to be able to do a bunch of stuff. Like, okay, I can do this like brass band, and then the next cue is, can we go like 80s techno, but not like 85 techno, like 83 techno, because that keyboard hadn't been invented yet. I'm like, yeah, I love that 80s techno. That is true. Okay, listen, we're gonna have to stop there. We're 7 minutes over time, so I do apologize, but I think you'll all agree that yeah, we could have talked about this for hours. There's so much to kind of talk about. The key things for me, for people who are looking at this part of the industry, is just to understand, it's absolutely to understand places that you can start. And there's so many different ways in. There is production music. The short film thing, I think we have talked a little bit about now, like finding who commissions short films and working back from there. The thing that Banky said about student projects, oh my God, absolutely, so critical. Yeah, specialized versus general, so many different things, so many things that are on my board here that I haven't even talked about, the rise of VODs and but we'll do that next time. On behalf of the Ivors Academy and on behalf of the Musicians Union, I want to send a huge thank you to all of our panelists, to Kirstine, to Banky, to Jenna, and to Zoe. I want to thank all of you for sticking with us, Kelly and Kelly and Kelly and Kelly, through the kind of slight gremlins at the start of the session. I hope you've all really enjoyed it. As I said, campaign that I talked about, Composers Against Bias, you can find that out in the Musicians Union, the Ivors Academy website, lots more information there, and hopefully we'll see you all again somewhere down the line. But for now, on behalf of the panelists and behalf of everybody in the room, let's say a big thank you in the traditional manner. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, I'm now going to press the leave button.